The police were often quite aggressive, sometimes brutal to people in ACT UP. You know, we were direct action, militant AIDS activists, queer, very queer, and the police were often really hostile towards us. People got hurt in the demonstrations. So for that reason alone, it felt really important to have impartial observers. I remember seeing Citizens Alert observers. I always thought how wonderful that these people are here to observe the demonstration, to watch the police, to report on any brutality. It was an intergenerational thing, and here were these very dignified older people who, on principle, were there supporting our right to be in the streets and be protesting. You didn't always feel that. You know, when I was doing that kind of activism, I didn't always feel that older people were with us, wanting us to be doing that. And I always felt that from Citizens Alert.
One of the incidents that I remember very vividly was hearing about a gay couple who were physically attacked at a fast food restaurant right across the street from the Town Hall police station. It was clearly a hate crime. Were called faggots and so forth. One of the two men managed to extricate himself from the physical attack, ran across the street to the police station, all bloody, ran up the stairs to the police desk, and the first words out of the desk sergeant's mouth was not, "How can I help you?" or "Let's get some help, get some medical attention." No, it was, "Stop bleeding on my desk." Citizens Alert formed an important buffer for the community in that they had had a long-standing relationship with the Chicago Police Department to basically let the police know that it wasn't only LGBT people, it was other citizenry in the city who were watching, and that if the police did the wrong thing and re-victimized our community, that they were going to protest. This was not just going to be swept under the rug. And that was a signal service to the LGBT community at a time when police violence against our community was quite routine. I mean, there still are problems with that, but I think thanks to the series of protest marches, which were in turn enabled to a great deal by the actions of Citizen Alert, we have been able to tamp down some of the worst instances of violence against the LGBT community by the Chicago police force.
To have Citizens Alert observers there as almost like an extra layer of protection in the face of that kind of police hostility and violence, that was always really welcome.
The Chicago Police Department Intelligence Division had two different units. One unit, the organized crime unit, targeted criminal activity, but the Red Squad targeted non-criminal activity, specifically political and religious lawful activity. And because they did not target criminal activity, they did not make arrests. If they identified some individual or organization that they wished to destroy, they had to do it secretly. Most of the information came from infiltrators. These would be undercover police officers or paid civilian informers.
One of the ways that you could identify a police spy, we found, was they were always available. They volunteered to do everything. One of the spies that volunteered for everything said he was a truck driver, and that's why his hours were so flexible. He appeared wherever you wanted him. David could be there any hour of the day or night. He'd change his shift. And it turned out, as we got more and more suspicious, we were able to verify that he really was in the surveillance business, and that Citizens Alert was one of his targets. And he was about to graduate from the police academy. So several of us decided we'd go to the graduation and congratulate him. So when David started coming back down the aisle, we all stood up and clapped like mad. And David just stopped in his tracks. We didn't really want to embarrass him in a way because his family, his wife and his kids were there. So we didn't want to make a big, ugly deal in any way of saying, we've discovered who you are and what you've been doing all this time, David. But we followed him out, and his people were standing in line shaking hands with everybody. We shook hands and said, we knew you could do it, David.
And they used what was termed the vacuum technique. They would just gather all the information they could. The Red Squad infiltrator would give this report to the Red Squad. They would give it to the police department. So at the next police board meeting, the police board and the superintendent would know exactly what the questions were going to be beforehand.
In Citizens Alert, we went to the monthly police board meeting and we're raising our hands, trying to be called on, in order to make our point. In the meantime, these guys are being paid to try to infiltrate the office and report what we're going to come to ask her at the police board meeting. It was ridiculous.
They gathered intelligence and targeted groups for destruction because they were critical of the mayor or critical of policies of the national government. They had a very broad definition of what was subversive. And they had 14,000 organizations indexed and 258,000 individuals. So we filed a lawsuit, and when we got access to all the files, there were reports about the preparation of our lawsuit. Well, what happened was the woman who was on the Citizens Alert board had volunteered to assist in preparing this lawsuit. She was confidential informant number 5633. So she would interview people saying, what information do you have about the Red Squad? What did they do to you? She would then give that to the attorney for the plaintiffs, and she would also give it to the Red Squad. So here we are, we're suing the Red Squad, alleging that they spied on lawful political activity, and at the same time, they're spying on us. The most important part was they didn't think they had done anything wrong. They actually said in court, we have a right to spy on anyone we want for any reason we want. It was merely a means towards the end. The end was they were attempting to identify groups that they thought posed a political threat to the mayor or the current policies of the status quo on a national level and destroy them. Although it's certainly legitimate to spy on terrorism and criminal activity, the problem is if you don't have any restrictions, history has shown that it's inevitable that the targeting expands. You start with terrorists, criminals, communists, radicals, and then you end up with the PTA and the League of Women Voters, which is what happened in Chicago.
I was working with some very wonderful faculty people who were some of the founders of the Urban Studies program, and we started to talk about how we could talk about issues of social justice that were happening in the city of Chicago. One of the issues that we really wanted to deal with was the issue of policing in Chicago. And one of our faculty people said, we should have Citizens Alert. And so in comes Mary Powers. Our students were predominantly middle to upper middle class white students. And so I thought it was really good because when you talk about racial issues, people think if you're a person of color that you have a vested interest in the issue that you're talking about, and therefore you can't give an honest, unbiased opinion. When people hear from someone who said, I observed this, I was outraged by it, I am not directly impacted by it, but I know that I have a responsibility to do something about it. When students say, I'm overwhelmed, I don't know what to do, I'm ashamed, then you can say, okay, here's somebody who may have gone through those same kind of emotions, and this is how she worked through those emotions to do social justice work. And we're telling people, don't sit in your outrage, but to do something about your outrage. You know, if you really, really believe that this is wrong, what can you do about it?
It is now my honor to present the Jane Addams Justice Advocates Award to Mary Powers and to Gladys Lewis.